Ang ating kwento, isinulat ng tadhana. Bawat kabanata, puno ng pag-asa. Walang ibang bida kundi ikaw at ako. Sa entablado ng buhay, ito ang
My world is built on laps, sets, and personal bests. My discipline is etched into every muscle fiber, in every beat of my heart. On the track and field, I know where I start, and I know when I finish. Every variable is controlled. The resilience of the shoes, the strength of the breath, the angle of the jump. My success is the result of ruthless precision. So it's not surprising that I am captivated by a man who is just as disciplined as I am, but in a way that is colder and more dangerous. Professor Rian. To me, he isn't just the chemistry teacher. He is the impenetrable wall, the perfect reaction with zero emotional byproduct. He is the ultimate challenge, harder to shatter than any record I chase. His body, wrapped in a clean and stiff lab coat, suggests control, well-built, unshakable, like the steel support in the lab. I can see the depth of his shoulders beneath the fabric, the way the bones in his hands move as he carefully adjusts the flask. His posture is always straight, his eyes sharp, like a laser passing through every detail and indicating that no error is allowed. And I want to break him. I want to see what anomaly emerges when that perfect wall is touched by fire. It is exactly 3 in the afternoon. The final bell rings out, permitting the ordinary students to leave. This is my signal. They are the students who think life is over when the bell is over. I am not like that. For me, the real lab begins when everyone has left. Before entering the faculty floor, I made sure I practiced intensely. 10 laps, sprints, and plyometrics under the heat of the sun. I inhaled the cold aircon in the hallway, but I didn't shower. That decision wasn't an accident. I need to fill his space with my presence, with the sensual smell of my effort, something he can't control or classify in his formulas. The sweet smell of sweat, salt, and testosterone, a liquid he can't contain in a beaker. When I walked in, I saw Rian alone, focused on listing the chemicals. He seemed not to notice me. "Sir," my voice deliberately made to hold just a hint of respect, just enough so he couldn't kick me out. This is my first brush against the wall. Professor Rian lifted his head. His gaze was serious and his face was emotionless. The absolute control. "Mr. Jael, your cleanup protocol isn't finished yet. And why is there a smell of sweat here?" he asked, his tone calm but tinged with professional disappointment. The twitch at the corner of his lip was almost invisible, but enough for me to know I had reached him. I smiled, inviting him in. "Can I stay? I need to finish the titration of unknown acid that I didn't complete. That's my extra credit, isn't it?" I knew he needed evidence of my intellect to let me stay. I continued to explain, each word a drop deliberately placed on his professional wall. "Also, I ran 10 laps before coming in. I didn't wash the smell off immediately. Sorry, sir, but my dedication to the lab work won't lessen. I want to get the A+. He looked at the beaker lined up for cleaning. "Don't use my lab as a changing room. And I didn't give you extra credit for being careless. You know your practice schedule. Discipline shouldn't be limited to the track." I smiled inwardly. Discipline. We are the same in that field. But his discipline is his cage, and my discipline is my key. "I know, but if I don't finish this now, I won't be able to submit it before the deadline tomorrow," I pleaded, looking directly at him. I wasn't asking, I was demanding his attention. "Besides, Professor, you know how important it is for me to see how I can fix this failure. Isn't chemistry all about the correction of errors?" He looked over my shoulder at the intensity of my tiredness mixed with ambition. His study of me was sharp, like his analysis of a compound under the microscope. I saw a slight twitch at the corner of his eye, more intense now. A micro-expression of interest that he was trying to suppress, proof that he felt me. 5 minutes. If you make one wrong step, you leave, he warned. And don't call me sir when we are alone. Call me Professor Rian. Here, The professional boundary remains, Jael. That order, his changing of his title when it was just us. Those were the small lines I was breaking. His use of my name without Mr. He allowed me entry into his controlled space. I smiled again, and this time I wasn't pretending it was about chemistry. Roger that, Professor Rian. I knew he couldn't kick me out. He needed precision in his world, and I was the hardest equation he had to solve. As he continued his inventory, I knew his mind was more focused on me. I felt his sharp stares, following my every move. I moved carefully, but with enough swagger to let him know I wasn't scared. I forced myself to be more efficient in handling the glassware, not for the grade, but to impress him, the perfectionist teacher. The titration was the perfect moment. It's a process that requires precise control and high concentration. But I knew my true endpoint wasn't in the flask, but in reaching Rian. I slowed the flow of the titrant, making sure I looked serious about the work. But as I approached the endpoint, I intentionally overshot. I looked at the color turning neon pink, a clear mistake. This was my distraction, my trap. Ah, I overshot! My shout was partly disappointment, but mostly my bait. I took my focus off the titrant and directed all my attention to his arrival. He quickly approached. He didn't send an assistant or give an order from afar. He came to my bench, and now, his scent, the mint and citrus mixed with clean detergent, was blending with the smell of my sweat. The clash of our scents was intense, like a reaction releasing a steam of tension. You didn't watch the end point. You didn't slow the flow, Rian stated coldly. I know, Professor Rian, but it was fast. It's like I had no control, I said, looking at the flask with the vivid pink color. This was my biggest lie. I had complete control over this situation. My lack of control was his weakness. Chemistry, Mr. Jael, is not emotion. It is not speed or power, he said, and suddenly he was beside me. His well-built body created a barrier between me and the lab. It was close enough for me to feel the heat emanating from him. His lab coat slightly brushed against my shoulder. As he approached, my gaze couldn't avoid the line of his trousers. Beneath the lab coat and tailored pants, there was an intense presence, a large impression of his manhood that seemed to confirm his controlled power. This was the anomaly he couldn't hide, even with the tightest fabric. Chemistry is focus. Watch me. Use your eyes, not your wrist. In that moment, he broke his own rule. No teacher would hold a student's hand like this unless necessary, but he needed to. He needed to control my failure. Rian brought his hand closer, his large palm wrapped around my hand, which was holding the stopcock of the burette. I could feel the nervousness in his palm, the opposite of the cold glass of the burette. His skin was soft but hard underneath, like polished marble. His pulse was fast, and I was surprised. A man of control had a heart rate that signaled agitation. Don't be afraid to use strength, but it needs to be controlled, he whispered. His breath was hot on my ear. I could feel his firm chest against my back, and how he tried to maintain an inch of distance, even though our hands were touching. The smell of mint was more intense now as he held his breath. I wasn't breathing out. Every drop coming out of the burette felt like a heartbeat, my heartbeat. He ordered me to watch the color change, but my full attention was on him, on his jawline, on the way his lips moved. Sir, I softly replied, deliberately calling him by the forbidden title. That title was a reminder of the line we couldn't cross yet. Call me Professor Rian, and why aren't you looking at the... His voice trailed off. Maybe he felt how close we were. Maybe he felt the tension stronger than any chemical bond. Now not only his hand was trembling, but his whole body. The solution turned pale pink, the perfect endpoint. He achieved the perfect reaction. But the real reaction was between the two of us. He quickly let go, as if afraid that touch might cause a fire. He immediately stepped back 2 paces. The heat left by his palm remained on me, and I knew it remained on him too. That's precision, Rian said, his voice seeming to return to normal, but his breathing was heavy and uncontrolled. Clean that up now. You can leave, Jael. I smiled, not at him, but at myself. I saw what I wanted to see. Beneath his ice wall, there was fire, and now I knew how to fan it further. His precision was broken, and his control was doubted. "Understood, Professor Rian. Thank you for the extra lesson." As I walked out, I tried to keep my walk casual, but when I reached the door, I looked back. Professor Rian was still standing by the bench, looking at the pink flask. He wasn't moving. He seemed petrified in shock, and his large hand was on the side of his lab coat, where my hand had been. I knew my project wasn't finished. The titration was just the beginning. His free radical wouldn't leave until he got the bond he needed. The extra lesson would continue. I need to find his weak spot. And I know where to start. The next day, I will schedule an extra consultation about quantum chemistry, a topic beyond the curriculum, and a reason for us to have more time together in a more private place. The pale pink solution from yesterday's titration still played behind my eyelids, but the memory of our hands, Professor Rian's controlled grip over mine, was stronger. The intellectual pursuit of quantum mechanics had served its purpose. It had dissolved the white laboratory barrier and forced us to acknowledge the charged non-local connection between us. He had felt it. His sudden silence, the rapid beat beneath his thick wrist, the undeniable declaration beneath the crispness of his tailored pants. It all confirmed that the rules of his professional world were failing to contain the physical reality. The time for theoretical entanglement was over. Now it was time for the entanglement of bodies. I found him after his last class, not in the faculty break room, but walking briskly towards the parking lot. His movements were precise, efficient, the stride of a man who trains with purpose. He was still in his dark gray work slacks and a fresh collared shirt. He looked untouchable, professional armor back in place. "Professor Rian," I called out, my voice carrying the easy confidence of a top athlete. I didn't run to catch up. I let him feel the steady, purposeful approach of my steps behind him. He stopped, turning slowly. The afternoon sun caught the dark amber flecks in his eyes. He looked tired again, guarded. "Mr. Jael, I thought we established that further approximation research was on you." "It is," I agreed, stopping a careful 3 feet away. "But I have a physical problem that only a man with your kind of functional strength and attention to mechanics can solve." I let my eyes run down his torso and back up, an obvious challenging appraisal. "I am a chemist, Jael, not a maintenance worker." "It's about the hurdles on the track," I explained, leaning in slightly, lowering my voice. "The locking mechanism on the new set is misaligned. It's heavy steel, requires precision to adjust, and a powerful grip to keep steady. The athletic supervisor is out. I can't risk my teammates getting hurt before the regional meet. I need someone who understands balance and leverage better than I do." I watched him struggle again. This wasn't a homework request. It was a plea rooted in my identity as an athlete, an appeal to his own clear athleticism, and a demand for his expertise in mechanical integrity. It was also an offer to bring him into my world, a space defined by sweat, power, and physical exertion. "I have a meeting scheduled," he clipped out, reaching for his car door handle. "I'm sure the fate of my scholarship and the safety of my team could be worth 15 minutes of your time," I countered, my eyes holding his. It was a bluff, an escalation. "If you can't, I understand. I'll ask one of the older coaches, but they don't have your attention to detail." He gripped the handle hard, his knuckles white. The appeal to his ego, his precision, was the key. He exhaled a long, heavy breath, acknowledging defeat. "Fine, 15 minutes. Meet me at the track storage room in 10. I need to change." His voice was low, and he didn't look at me again before getting into his car and driving off. The tension I had just ignited, however, lingered in the air. He had to change. He was preparing his body for me. The track equipment room was a hot, cramped space tucked under the bleachers. It smelled overwhelmingly of rubber, dry dirt, and old metallic sweat. It was the antithesis of his pristine lab, a place where professionalism was melted away by physical exertion. I was leaning against a stack of worn mats when the door opened, letting in a shaft of late afternoon sun. My breath hitched. Professor Rian was no longer wearing his professional facade. He was dressed in a pair of dark, fitted athletic shorts and a form-fitting, sleeveless training shirt. The thin, damp fabric clung to his broad chest and the dense, sculptured muscle of his arms. The lines of his traps and shoulders were sharp, a testament to years of disciplined weight training, making the simple act of breathing look like a feat of masculine engineering. He carried a small utility box. His hair was slightly damp, perhaps from a quick splash of water to compose himself. But the effort was futile. The heat of the room instantly brought a sheen to his skin. "Where is the hurdle?" he asked, his voice low and businesslike, deliberately avoiding my gaze. "Over here," I directed him to a back corner. "It's the mechanism on the right side." He knelt down beside the hurdle, his focused posture instantly bringing my attention to the taut, powerful lines of his back and thighs. He wrestled with the heavy locking pin for a moment, the fine nylon of his shirt stretching across his biceps and lats. "It's jammed," he murmured. He stood up, clearly frustrated by the lack of leverage. He ran a hand over the back of his neck, and with a swift, decisive pull, he ripped the training shirt over his head. The sight was a physical shockwave. He tossed the shirt onto a nearby bench. The powerful symmetry of his torso was breathtaking. Every muscle was defined, yet functional, not just for show. My eyes moved instantly. The hard planes of his pectorals, the clean, deep cuts of his abdominal muscles, and the mesmerizing, deep ravine of his V-line disappearing into the waistband of his shorts. He was a masterpiece of control, yet completely stripped of his professional layer. The air around him wasn't the clean mint of the faculty break room. It was the raw, heated scent of a powerful man, clean soap and the sharp, stimulating musk of his skin, warming with exertion. It was the scent of a primal reaction. My gaze dropped further, drawn magnetically to the undeniable weight and presence visible beneath the thin, dark shorts. The fabric was unforgiving, straining to contain the hard, masculine bulk that commanded attention. It was a physical declaration, a force that seemed to push against the seams, daring the confines to break. I felt a sudden, fierce heat flood my own body, a mirror to the heat in the room. My heart hammered against my ribs, echoing the rhythm of a sprint finish. "Jael the wrench," Rian commanded, his voice tight. He was aware of my silence, of my unrelenting stare, but he couldn't stop. He needed to focus on the metal, the physical problem, to keep his mind from the biological problem standing 3 feet away. I moved slowly, deliberately, retrieving the wrench. When I returned, I held it out to him, forcing him to reach for it. As his broad, warm fingers brushed mine, the contact was electric, sharp enough to make us both flinch. He ignored it, focusing on the hurdle. "Hold the base steady," he ordered. I knelt opposite him. We were now close enough that if he leaned forward, our bare shoulders would brush. I could feel the heat radiating off his body, see the subtle dampness on his skin. I watched his abs flex and contract with every grunt of effort, every twist of the wrench. The entire musculature of his torso was involved in the minute mechanical task. "Don't wobble it," he warned, his voice low, almost a growl. His face was set in a mask of concentration, but the hazel eyes were dark and heavy. "I won't," I whispered back, my own voice husky. I wasn't just holding the hurdle, I was holding my breath, holding back the urge to lean in and feel the texture of his skin against my lips. Finally, with a loud click, the locking pin released. Rian straightened up, towering over me. He ran the back of his hand across his forehead, leaving a streak of sweat across his cheekbone. "There, fixed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get to my meeting." He reached for his shirt, his movements jerky, desperate to cover himself. "Thank you, Professor Rian," I said, standing up, forcing him to meet my eyes before he could shield himself. The victory was overwhelming. "You're even better at mechanics than I thought." I let my gaze drop for a lingering, confirming moment to the irrefutable evidence of my effect on him, before finally allowing him to pull the shirt back over his head. I had achieved physical proximity, witnessed his vulnerability, and confirmed the mutual attraction. The next step wasn't a consultation, it was a surrender, and I knew exactly how to ask for it. The heat from the track equipment room clung to me like a victory flag. Professor Rian had exposed his strength, and in doing so, he had revealed his ultimate weakness. He was just a man with powerful needs hidden behind an impenetrable veneer of science and discipline. His hasty retreat, the desperate way he pulled the shirt over his magnificent torso, was all the confirmation I needed. He was afraid of the chemical reaction I caused, and fear was the purest form of desire. The professional line was already blurry. The quantum entanglement we had discussed now demanded a physical solution, a resolution to the non-local connection that was consuming us both. I found him the next day in his classroom, precisely 10 minutes before the first lecture. He was arranging his notes, his back still as rigid as a steel post. His shirt was a formal light blue this time, tucked in so perfectly it looked painted on. He was trying to re-establish the professional order I had shattered. "Professor Rian," I greeted him, my voice respectful, almost contrite. I moved slowly, ensuring my presence was a quiet, relentless pressure. He didn't look up immediately. "Mr. Jael, if this is about the hurdle, the mechanism is now fully functional. No further discussion is required." "It's not about the hurdle," I said, leaning my hands on the edge of his desk. The wood was cold, my palms were warm. "It's about my future. The regional meet is 2 weeks away. My scholarship depends on my GPA, and my Physics 101 grade is slipping. The formulas are confusing, and the TA sessions are useless. I need precision, Professor. Your precision." He finally looked up, his hazel eyes tired but wary. "There is a university-approved tutoring center. I cannot personally. I don't need a student assistant reading from a textbook." I cut him off, my voice dropping, low and demanding. "I need the man who can see the infinitesimal misalignment in a piece of steel. I need the mind that can calculate the exact moment of control. This isn't just about Physics 101, Professor. This is about your attention." I pushed the boundary further. "I need a private, uninterrupted session. 1 hour, twice a week until the exam. And I need a place where the institution doesn't interfere with the transfer of knowledge. Your apartment." The audacity of the request hung in the stale classroom air. It was a complete disregard for every ethical boundary, every professional rule he lived by. It was the moment of truth. Ryan's face remained a mask of flawless control, but his large hand, resting on the desk, curled into a tight, white-knuckled fist. The visible tension in that hand was a scream. "You are stepping far beyond the limits of acceptability, Jael," he stated, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "The answer is no. This is reckless, it is inappropriate, and it is a blatant violation of my contract." "Is it reckless, or is it honest?" I challenged him, maintaining my stare. I pushed off the desk and took one slow step towards him. "My honest failing is you. My concentration is shot. I can't focus on the titration when all I can think about is the sweat on your abs when you fix that hurdle. I can't look at the Schrödinger equation without seeing the entanglement in your eyes. My failure to control my academic performance is a direct result of my inability to control my attraction to you." I paused, letting the raw confession hang between us. "Solve the problem, Professor. Tutor me in a place where your perfect discipline might fail, and prove to me, once and for all, that your control is real. Or admit that you are just as much of an anomaly as I am." Rian leaned back in his chair, defeated. The energy seemed to drain out of his posture, and for the first time he looked like a man, not an institution. He didn't answer immediately. He stared at the whiteboard, then out the window, his entire body conveying the internal collapse of his world. "Friday," he finally whispered, the word thin and strained. 6 o'clock, my apartment complex. I will text you the unit number. If you breathe a word of this, not about the tutoring, but about anything else, I will end my career and ensure yours never starts." "Do you understand the gravity of this, Jael?" "I understand," I replied, my own heart pounding in triumph. "I accept the consequence." The air in Ryan's apartment was clean, sterile, and quiet, smelling faintly of citrus and expensive leather, a perfect reflection of his need for order. It was a minimalist haven, white walls, steel accents, and books stacked with obsessive precision. no clutter, no unnecessary emotion. I arrived exactly at 6 p.m. Ryan, wearing a fresh cotton t-shirt and gray track pants, was waiting by the door. He looked different, younger, unprotected without his lab coat and tie. His eyes, however, were still guarded, intensely focused on my entry. "The study is here," he directed, his voice clipped. The tutoring started, a fragile facade of professionalism. He was trying to explain the complexities of Newtonian mechanics, but the concepts dissolved under the weight of our shared secret. He sat opposite me at a sleek glass table, the only separation between us. "The force, Jael, must be applied precisely," Rian explained, tapping the equation on my notebook. "If the angle is off, the energy is wasted." I leaned forward, my arm brushing his. "But what if the energy isn't meant to be applied to the problem?" I asked, my voice barely a breath. "What if the force is meant to be released?" He stiffened. He pulled his hand back, gripping the pen hard. "Stop it. We are studying physics." "No, Professor," I challenged him softly. "We are studying tension. I saw you yesterday. I saw the force you were struggling to contain, the pressure." I slid my notebook away and slowly reached my hand across the glass table, resting it on the polished wood next to his clenched fist. "I need you to solve this problem," I whispered, my eyes burning into his. Ryan closed his eyes. His breathing was heavy, fast, mirroring the frantic state of the room's controlled silence. I watched the battle play out across his face. The discipline, the years of ethical adherence, crumbling under the weight of his own physical desire. "Jael, don't," he groaned, his voice breaking. I didn't listen. I used my free hand to reach up and gently grasp the collar of his t-shirt. I gave one soft, deliberate pull. It was an invitation, a clear demand. The shirt was pulled taut over his chest, showcasing the impossible hardness beneath. It was the final straw. Ryan's eyes snapped open, and the last vestiges of his professional control shattered. With a sound somewhere between a curse and a gasp, he surged forward, knocking his chair backwards. The glass table scraped loudly against the floor as he reached across the space and grabbed my face, pulling my mouth violently against his. The kiss was the explosion we had both been calculating and denying. It wasn't tender or exploratory. It was a desperate, raw discharge of weeks of pent-up desire. It was chemical, a fierce, exothermic reaction that consumed the air. His mouth was hot, demanding, and utterly uncontrolled. I tasted mint, coffee, and the metallic tang of his complete surrender. Ryan tore his mouth away, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His hands were gripping my jaw hard, his eyes dark with a mix of fear and lust. "I warned you," he choked out, his voice thick with raw passion. "I warned you about the consequence." "I know," I replied, my voice husky with triumph. I reached up and pulled his shirt up, replicating the move he had made yesterday, and then I stripped it off his torso. The sight of his muscular body, now fully exposed and breathing hard, confirmed my victory. I used my hands to run down the tight, defined muscles of his abs, following the V-line that pointed downwards, confirming the pressure that was now beyond containment. Ryan shuddered, his control dissolving into pure instinct. He grabbed my hips and pushed me back against the white wall, pressing his powerful, hard body into mine. The contact was undeniable, the friction igniting everything. "You are too much, Jael," he breathed, the words heavy with awe and lust. His hands, which had been clutching my hips, moved up, grasping the bottom of my own t-shirt. He dragged the shirt up swiftly, tearing it free from my body and tossing it aside. His eyes dropped instantly to my torso, the flat, striated planes of my stomach, the lean, taut lines forged by hours of sprints, and the defined cut of my serratus. It was the body of an apex predator, and Ryan studied it with the meticulous intensity of a scientist examining a perfect specimen. "You are magnificent," he murmured, his gaze consuming every inch of my skin before returning to my eyes. "Absolutely magnificent." The crisp, clean air of the apartment was instantly filled with the scent of sex, sweat, and shattered rules. The tutoring session was over. The lesson now was entirely primal. Rian, the meticulous chemist, was now ruled entirely by the animal instinct he had spent his life suppressing. His mouth returned to mine with punishing need, his body demanding the final physical resolution we had both been seeking. The scientific apparatus of his life, precision, control, and ethics, collapsed into the glorious, messy chaos of human desire. As he moved us, my hand instinctively found its way down, cupping the impossible, staggering bulk contained within his athletic pants. The reality of his size, the rock-solid, formidable length that strained against the material, sent a fresh wave of shock and breathless anticipation through me. This was the true force he had been holding back, a monumental, demanding presence that seemed to mock the small, precise world of chemical equations he taught. The size was breathtaking, overwhelming, and utterly compelling. The sheer magnitude of the consequence was suddenly physically real. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the scent of sex and regret. We lay tangled on the floor, the remnants of the tutoring session scattered around us, a pen, a notebook, the fallen chair. Rian was holding me tightly, his heart still hammering against my cheek. He was no longer the imposing professor, he was simply Rian, a man who had broken every law he held sacred. He finally spoke, his voice quiet, hollow. I violated every ethical code. My contract, my integrity. It's all gone, Jael. I pulled myself up, looking at his handsome face. I reached out and traced the line of his jaw. No, Professor, you didn't violate anything. You simply allowed the true chemical reaction to occur. You stopped hiding the heat. He looked at me, his hazel eyes clouded with sorrow and something deeper, a dangerous acceptance. You know what this means? If anyone ever finds out, I lose everything. I lose my career. I could face legal action. I know, I admitted, finally confessing the truth of my entire calculated pursuit. I knew the price when I first walked into your lab, but I wanted you more than I wanted the safety of the line. I wanted you to choose me over your discipline. Rian was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved. He didn't pull away. He pulled me closer, burying his face in my neck. He inhaled my scent, sweat, youth, and victory, and the last barrier dissolved. You won, Jael, he sighed, the admission heavy and irreversible. You destroyed the professor, and now you have the man. He lifted his head, his gaze intensely personal. But the rules have changed. There is no going back to the classroom dynamic. This is our new law, absolute secrecy, total discretion, and entanglement only happens in the private space, away from the eyes of the world. I smiled, a slow, conquering grin. I accept your terms, Professor Rian. This is the precision I was truly looking for. I leaned in, kissing him softly this time, a promise of a dangerous, secret future. The laws of the university no longer applied. Only the laws of attraction, the undeniable, relentless force of two bodies that were never meant to be together, now locked in a perpetual forbidden bond. The academic year continued, but for Rian and Jael, the real lesson had just begun. The classroom was a stage, their roles strictly defined. But after the final bell, the world collapsed into the quiet, lawless space of a private apartment, where the only subject taught was the science of undeniable desire.
Ito ang ating kwento, isinulat ng tadhana. Bawat kabanata, puno ng pag-asa.